Well, hello class, and welcome to Unit 7. Once again, some excellent content last week. Just so impressed by all that's being shared, discussed, thought about, communicated, and so forth. Really pleased with the work and the quality that's being done with that. So, this is a unique course. This is very much what do you think about this, right? So, I can share ideas. Obviously, we can talk about what is vocation, and I'm giving you just a grip of information, right? So you are learning tremendous amounts, and again, this is the idea that I'm learning things. I'm actually, because of what I've learned, I'm forced to unlearn things, and I'm relearning things as far as the content and how I think about these ideas of vocation. I was thinking about this class, and I'm actually putting together some proposal materials for something pretty exciting we're doing on the undergraduate side of things. And somebody asked, what should we title it? All right, so it's a speaker series of sorts, and it's about vocation. So my thought was, well, why don't we title it "Understanding Vocation in a Changing World"? Now, why would I say that? Because I think that not because it's easy or it's not a simple answer, given that I'm teaching this class and I couldn't think of anything else. But we live in a changing world. We see things differently. I was talking with a colleague just this morning about calling, about the work that we do, and if we don't understand vocation, if we don't understand calling, if we don't understand these things properly, then I think it affects the way that we think about our work improperly, right? So if I'm not thinking about what my actual calling is or what vocation is in the truest sense of things, well, then I'm going to have that kind of reverberate throughout all that I do in the work that I'm part and parcel to, and I'm going to I'm not going to, I don't think, be as effective because I'm going to be pursuing something and I may be pursuing the wrong things and thinking about it in the wrong ways. So I think case in point is this week. We're looking at this idea of motivation. So values and motivation, you can look at the learning outcomes and even these questions or the statements that we're looking at. We're seeking to understand the role that values and motivation play in a career development process and realize how one's values tend to motivate them as it relates to their vocation and calling. So, if we go around and we will do this, what are your motivations? What are your values? There's a core value inventory that you'll take, and this is a challenging thing. We start kind of this large siphon, and we have to work our way down this funnel. So you have to get down to what your top 2 core values are, and no one likes doing that. I don't want to have to limit. I think about core values like, there's a lot of things that are important to me. My core values are plenty. Like, I don't want to have to say only 2 things are the most important thing to me in the world. And yet what we're being forced to do then is to really think deeply and strategically, and what does this really mean? Because if you think about it, we've talked about this, but as a person think, as a man think, as a woman think, as we think, right, as we think up here, so we speak, so we think, so we act, and really, as Francis Schaeffer would say, so we are. So out of how we think, out of what we believe, we do all of these things. We are how we think. So as we think about what it is that motivates us, it's important that we think about that rightly. And I think it's important, too, when you think about it from a career development standpoint. So there's this thought, and I think it's... again, I don't know if that's necessarily a wrong way to think. It's not a bad thing that we're thinking this way. I think it's just not entirely accurate. So if I were to say to you, okay, so what is it that motivates you at work? Well, we all like paychecks, right? So I like a paycheck. I was talking to my undergraduate students today, and we did this exercise where, they're about to graduate for the most part in this career class, and I asked them to list all of the things that they're going to have to pay for once they graduate from college. And so we went on the list. We talked about rent and food and entertainment and car payments and gas and automobile upkeep, entertainment, internet, cell phone, the list goes on and on and on. And by the time we look at this board, or I guess over here on this whiteboard, we look at the board and all the students go, oh, and they're picking their chins up off the ground thinking, wow, that is so much. I have to do so much. And they're thinking, how do I do that? They're kind of like, ugh, so frustrated, so discouraged, because they got to pay all these bills. So they're thinking about all the bills they have to pay. So everybody likes to get paid. I had a student say, because I look at that list, I look at what's up there, I look at the things that I have to cover as far as my every day, every month, every week, every year expenses. And what that tells me is that an unpaid internship is no longer something that I consider. I would love to get the experience, and I love how she said it. She said experience ain't going to pay those bills up there, right? So she's looking at the whiteboard and she's saying that, free work isn't going to pay what I have to do. And yet, money, as the research will indicate over and over again, money is not the main motivator when it comes to work. So if you ask the question, why do people leave their jobs? It's not because often they don't get paid enough money. If that were the case, if we were looking to increase our retention numbers, then let's just give them some more money. And yet that's not why people leave all the time. People are motivated in different ways. And so this week, this unit, we're going to look at that. So there's a reason that people choose to work where they work. So I work here at Azusa Pacific University for a number of reasons. One is, I get a paycheck. I love what I do, so it's nice to get paid for it. But also I've got similar values, right? So we're looking at it from a faith standpoint. I'm thinking about how can I integrate my Christian faith in teaching this content. So today I was talking to my students about, as we looked at all those numbers on the whiteboard, talking about Matthew 6:34, where it says that we are not to basically be anxious about tomorrow, for today has enough worries or enough anxieties of its own, right? So the questions that we look at in Scripture, who can add a single day to your life by worrying about? Nobody, right? So we think about all of these things. We worry about all of these things. We're constantly contemplating all of these things when it comes to work. I want to be able to pay my bills. I do. You do too. But there's so much more to it than just that. So we're going to explore that. It's interesting. One of my favorite books is a text written by Patrick Lencioni. So it's something along the line. I always forget if it's overcoming. I know but the 5 dysfunctions of a team, right? And so he says at the very beginning of this book, he says, a friend of his, a business friend, I'm going to paraphrase this, which means I'm probably going to butcher it. So if you're familiar with the text, I'm probably going to say this somewhat correctly, that you'll get the gist. He says, if I could get, or if you could get, all of the members of your team rowing in the same direction, you could dominate any industry at any time. He goes on. So I think about that reality. So one of the things that we didn't hear in that statement, that Lencioni's friend, his business partner friend, did not say, is if you can get all of your employees rowing in the same direction at the same time. He just said rowing in the same direction. I read that and I go, he didn't even say same time. So he's not even getting at that they have to be rowing in the same direction at the same time. Just in the same direction. So my question then was, what is it that motivates people to row in the same direction? So I use this a lot when I am working with churches. And churches are an interesting animal, right? So my church is about 1,000 people. Okay, so now there is a spiritual component to this for sure. I don't want to negate that at all. Okay, but I use this as an example when I'm talking with churches. So at a workplace, wherever it is that you work, the motivation, the thing that you can kind of the carrot that we can dangle in front. This is a pencil, but it's orange, so that's why I'm using it. That we can dangle in front is that paycheck, right? So do your work and you will get paid. Okay, and that's going to hopefully take us in the right direction, the same direction, right? We all know that it's not. So everyone's vying for something, they're fighting for recognition and so forth. But in a church, here's what's interesting. So and I've got a lot to say about church leadership and how it translates into multiple different avenues of success from a vocational standpoint and so forth. But let's say my church, 1,000 people, and I think we have a staff maybe of eight full-time pastors and ministers and folks on the leadership team. Okay, so 1,000 people, 8 people. And here's the thing about church. We have 1,000 people that we hope are rowing in the same direction, and we hope that they're rowing in the same direction at the same time. What is it that's motivating them, right? So there's no paycheck that's being dangled in front of them. Right? There's and even for the staff, oftentimes, because we think about nonprofit work, we think about church work, it's ministry. So we're going to get paid less than we would if we were to work in industry. So what we ask then, myself included, the congregant to do is to give, actually, to the mission of the church. So we ask them to row in the same direction, financially support the direction that we're going, and then to volunteer their time, right? So this is this interesting dynamic. So obviously in the Christian life, this is what we are asked to, and I think directed to do and expected to do if we were involved in the local church body. But what I'm getting at is, in a business, you would think that hanging this carrot in front of people, dangling in front of them, being the motivation, that's the thing that would draw them to all be headed in the same direction. And you would think that it would have them all rowing in the same direction at the same time. And yet when you look at churches, and especially churches that are growing, they're thriving, they're excited, they're moving forward, they're growing, you're seeing great things happen in the community around them, they're affecting the local community, the city, the region in which they're located, and so forth. It's typically people that are so jazzed to be a part of that they're willing to freely give their tithes and offerings, their money to the church. They're willing to freely give their time and efforts to support the mission of the church. And they show up. So if you look at that, now this is what the Christian is called to do, to be in community. But what I'm saying is that not everybody is doing that, right? So we're human, we're fallible, we sometimes don't do the things that we're supposed to do. But I'm just thinking from a strictly kind of stripped down, worldly standpoint, and again, I know that maybe I should or shouldn't do that, but if you think about it, hopefully you see the connection. That tells me that there's so much more that needs to motivate people to row in the same direction. So, think about where we've been. We've been talking about faith at work, faith and work. So if I can fully live out all of me, I can bring my faith to my job, I can be supported and so forth, right? And I'm not talking just from a faith-based parachurch or church ministry. I'm just talking about organizations that allow their people to fully live out who they are. They bring it all to the table, right? So I don't have to pretend that I'm not something to be in this place. If I'm working at, a target in administration or something like that, am I able to not just bring my, strategic planning hat, but my all of who Jeff is hat, right? So what are the things that motivate us? The things that motivate us are the intangibles, it would seem, right? So I want to know that I'm appreciated. I want to know that I'm able to be me. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to treat the Christian or the non-Christian, this target place or this industry, this Fortune 500 company the same as I would at AP. I'm not saying that at all. But there are going to be some circumstances where we are discouraged to live our faith out. And that's something that is an issue when it comes to fully living out our vocational identity and calling. So what I want us to explore this week is, what are those things, the values? What are the motivators? What are the things that keep us coming back? What are the things that encourage us to row in the same direction? And it's not, I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag, it's not necessarily that carrot that we have dangling in front of us. It's so much more. And so the more time we kind of dig deep into this, we understand what our values are, what our motivations are. What it does is it helps us to think about what's most important to us, right? So in addition to answering our questions, watching some films, reading some articles, reading our text, which this week it's Bridges, Transitions, we're also continue to work on our VPP, and we are working on our career development group project content. Okay, so lots still going on. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, call me. This should be your last kind of hurrah on both your final projects. So as you're editing, you're making final plans, if I can help in any way, please let me know. I've heard from very few of you, which tells me that things are going well, but if things are not going well, please let me know. I'd love to know. And I will look forward to seeing all that you included this week as I see you online.